What kind of wide body kit is that, bruh? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Motorfest, and well, as y'all know, the Nissan 240SX is now available, at least for the Season Pass owners at the moment, but do not worry, guys, you will be able to get this car later on if you do want it. Now, this car is also going to have a good amount of customization to it, so for me, guys, I may have to leave this thing red. I really do feel like red honestly fits this thing insanely well, and the S14 is also going to have a good amount of customization you can do to the vehicle as well, so for me, I'm probably going to leave it red, and that's more the fact that I do like the way this car does look in this color, but you can also change some things around like the hood and all that as well, so let's take a look at these. So we have that one, which is obviously a vent. Then we have the carbon vent. That looks kind of nice on there. Then we have the dual vent. We have the carbon, and then a full carbon hood. That one looks dope. Let's add that to it. Moving over to the front bumpers, guys, we have 11 other ones we can add, so I'm more of looking for something that isn't overdone and or, sticks out really oddly. Well, I guess like that, for example. I'm not really a big fan of how the splitters on some of these cars do, like, stick out super far. Like, I do understand to a certain extent with, like, a body kit, that would probably make a lot of sense, so I'm hoping this thing has a wide body kit to it, or that would look absolutely ridiculous, almost like, pretty much a car in GTA, I would say. Moving over to the next one. That's kind of cool. That's like a painted splitter. Kind of add that to it. Then we have that one. Then we have the intercooler. Then we finally have these two here. So it probably is going to depend on the actual build you guys want. But moving over to the fenders. Aha. What? What is that? What is that, dude? I... what kind of wide body kit is that, bruh? What? It looks like a... I don't even know. It almost looks like you threw like a wide body kit on like a smart car. Like, what is that? Let me know in the comments below, guys. Seriously, do you like this? I would almost say pretty much everybody is going to say no. That is most likely going to be the obvious answer here. Now, if you guys could have any body kit for the S14, aka like the 240SX, which body kit would you actually prefer and why? And I would most likely say it's not going to be this one. But moving over to the rims here, guys. So here are the stock Nissan rims here. Now, there is something I did want to go over here with the rims in Motorfest. Now, I have to admit they're not terrible, but let's be honest here, I do think they can do a bit better than how the rims are in this game at the moment. Like, some of them are cool, but I have noticed many of the rims have like a bright chromish type of color. Like, you can see the finish on here, and by the way, you can change the color, but guys, I would say I basically speak for everybody when I would say, what in the world type of color is that on your vehicle? Like, it shouldn't look that almost like bright, shiny type of color, and I really am not a big fan of how that actually looks. So, hopefully in the future we might actually get a legitimate color on the rims. That honestly does look terrible, and most of it almost wants me to add like these to it, which at least these rims look slightly better on this car, but I have to admit, guys, I'm not the biggest fan of the rims in Motorfest in general, so hopefully some type of update in the future would honestly be wonderful there, but for the calipers, though, I'm most likely going to keep those the regular black color, although you could maybe match it with red, but let's be honest, that is too much red. Moving over to the next part is going to be the side mirrors, so we have the regular ones here, then we have carbon, then we have those, which I'm not a big fan of, so let's go with carbon on there. Then moving over to the skirts here, guys, all you have is the carbon version of the regular ones, and to be honest, I would say not putting carbon on there's a great idea, unless depending on the actual build you might go for, but let's be honest, nobody's probably going to have carbon skirts on this with those crazy looking fenders. Speaking of that, guys, that is definitely a no for me, guys. I have to admit, that does not look that great. Now, the back kind of looks better than the front, but I feel like a lot of players are definitely looking for a different kit. Now, that is definitely not going to be a good looking body kit. Now, funnily enough, the back end looks better than the front, but I really would say, guys, a lot of players are probably searching for like a different kit, and who knows, maybe in the future in like a summit, we might see a different wide body kit. And now moving over to the wings, guys, we have the carbon fiber one here, which honestly doesn't look terrible. I would most likely add something like that to it, but moving over to the third one, um, I really have no idea what's going on right now, but do not worry, guys. I'm not playing a trick. I really have no idea. Here's the second wing. Going to the third one does that, so it's obviously a bug. I also have no idea what it looks like, so let's buy it and then back out. So it does actually take the entire thing off. It's just broken at the moment, so might have to do whatever that is. Let's move over to the next ones though. So now we have this one. Then we have this big wing, which honestly doesn't look terrible. But of course, with how the body kits are on this vehicle, I feel like most people are not going to add this wing to this car. But now moving over to the rear bumpers here, there's going to be 11 other ones you can add. So we now have the smoked out taillights. Then we have the dual exhaust. That looks okay. Then we have that one. I have to admit, this is probably the one I will most likely run on this car, but we also have a crazy looking one. I think that's way too much exhaust on this thing, and I would say many people might agree, but moving over to the next one, guys, we have the exhaust pointing toward the ground. Upon startup, though, I did hear an RX-7 startup, guys, and by the way, it was not LS swapped. It was indeed a rotary, and my goodness, it sounded absolutely incredible, so at least depending on your build, I would probably say that exhaust system is awesome. Moving over to the next one, though, we have this crazy looking, that actually doesn't look bad. It's also fully carbon fiber as well. Then moving over to the next one here. I would probably say these are most likely going to be insanely similar. Now, the one thing I have noticed, guys, I think it just changes like the actual color of the back piece and or like the taillights on there. So it really isn't going to be that much different, but at least this car does come with some nice customization. That way you can change around some things. Now, for the interior in this car, guys, I would probably do like a red stitching, but we obviously have a fully red car, so maybe mix it up a bit and actually do like a blue stitching in here. So let's see how this might look. Yeah, it's like not overdone and or looks kind of funny. You can't change anything in like the interior, like making this carbon and or like a nice finish. So obviously leaving that stock there, let's add it to the vehicle. Overall, though, guys, I do feel like this thing does look pretty dang awesome, and I really do feel like it is most likely going to come down to exactly how you want this car to look. At least it has some good customization with a very odd-looking wide-body kit. So arriving outside here, guys, with the 240SX, now I'm actually really glad I did set the car up this way, and I do feel like it kind of goes by the build you want or like what you might be aiming for, but I really do like the way the carbon fiber hood looks, plus you do see like the splitter being painted and or carbon at the same time, and I might be kind of odd saying this, but I do feel like these are probably the best rims, at least compared to the other rims you can put, which is probably not saying much because the rims look really bad in this game to a certain extent, but I really do like the way that wing looks as well, and also the exhaust does fit it. And then of course going over to the interior, you're then going to notice some nice detail. Also, I have a full tank of gas, so that is always going to be a big plus there, but I have to give them credit, guys. They actually have like legit button detail in this car, so some of the vehicles on the Crew 2 had some odd looking buttons, and it was kind of just like blurry and stuff. Now, I do know this game is obviously different, but I really do have to give them credit on the overall detail, because it really does help, especially in a racing game. But besides all of that though, guys, let's go drive the 240SX right now and do a quick top speed test with it. So I do want to mention, by the way, this thing is indeed a street tier 1, so if you were expecting this thing to hit like 250 miles an hour, that is unfortunately not going to happen. So in 5th gear right now, guys, cruising at 160. I will hit my nitrous after this corner, see what I can get it to. Hitting it now, let's see. So 192 miles an hour, 190-ish. So if you guys were wondering, by the way, one thing I have been noticing is many of the tier 1 cars, which all seem to be around the same with their top speed of being around 190 miles an hour, and I really do feel like that's probably like one of the best ways to balance. Like, for example, guys, many of the tier 2 vehicles also do around like 235 to 240, so I do know in some ways a lot of people might find that to be kind of odd how every vehicle basically has the exact same top speed, but I have to be honest, guys, I am really glad the way they actually did this is like this, and the reason for that is on the Crew 2, for example, some cars did like 230, and then other vehicles were hitting maybe like 265 miles an hour, so you basically were subject to using those certain cars because they were better. But now on Motorfest, you can actually run different cars like a Sylvia and or something like a 240SX here, and then jump into like a Shelby Cobra and still compete against those cars. Now, I do know to like a certain extent, sometimes that top speed can be a bit of an interesting topic because obviously you need some cars that, can be insanely fast and or kind of dominate, but I really do like the approach of actually having different cars that can compete, and I feel like in that way, guys, you can pick different vehicles that might not be as good, because if every vehicle does have the exact same top speed, then well, you could pick something like the Sylvia here and or I guess the 240. I really do keep calling it that, but you really could pick something like this car though and still compete against some of the better cars, and I do know some of the cars might be really good. Like for example, right now I know the Honda Civic Type R is one of the better street tier 1 vehicles, at least compared to like a muscle car, which I would say does make a lot of sense in some way, but even something like the 240 here, guys, is going to be a great vehicle overall. And of course, being on tier 1, you can also mess around with different races, and they really do have a different feeling compared to like tier 2. And of course, being on the lovely level 5 difficulty, you also get to mess with the AI, which by the way, guys, I have been noticing on certain events, even if your car is maxed out, there's always like 1 or 2 AI that are so dang fast it's almost hard to catch them, and I feel like in a certain extent that's kind of fine, but my goodness, even with a maxed out vehicle, I can barely catch some of these AI. But overall though, guys, I would say the 240SX is not going to be a pushover. What's also kind of insane about this car is the fact that it is indeed going to be a 5-speed, guys, and get this, I don't actually hate it because on the Crew 2, I wasn't the biggest fan of how these cars drove, and that can also come down to like the way they did shift and maybe the way they actually lost speed in some areas, but the 240SX here is definitely not going to be in that category, and I may even make like an updated video going over like the 5-speed transmissions in this game. Like, they really are that much better, guys, and I do feel like a lot more people are going to like them, so at least the positives do outweigh the negatives in a lot of areas with how the cars actually do feel, and even with the way they might shift also makes a big difference when racing, and I do feel like a lot of players do look for that. But overall, guys, from using this car in this race, I have to admit, the 240SX is going to be a great competitor in the Street Tier 1, and I definitely have to test this car out more to see what it can do, but that will also come down to the fact that I have not driven that many cars in this tier anyway. I really do have to level this up and or get better parts because at the moment, I'm basically running random purple and or blue parts. Now, for my final conclusion on this car, guys, driving this thing while it's raining at nighttime is honestly a whole different vibe, but overall, guys, I do feel like a lot of players are going to like the way this car does drive, and sure, it's probably not going to be like the fastest feeling vehicle out there, but even doing 150 miles an hour in this car does feel great, and I have to give them credit for like the overall balancing with the tier 2 and or the tier 1 vehicles. Like, it is night and day, and I really do feel like that was probably one of the best ways to do it. For example, guys, on the Crew 2, driving like a Lamborghini Huracan versus this would probably make no absolute sense whatsoever. Like, for one, it's not going to be fair, and two, if you were trying to do like a summit and you really were like a big fan of the 240, you could not even drive this car in that summit because, well, the car itself will not even be able to compete with the Lambos. So at least you can run different vehicles like the 240 now and or compete against different vehicles like the Shelby, and I would probably say the overall bouncing there is probably the best thing they could have done. I do want to mention, by the way, guys, do stay tuned for the Z400 tomorrow, and I will be going over a lot of the new vehicles in the coming weeks and stuff, so definitely stay tuned. But let me know what you guys think about the 240 in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more insight.